Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down big ideas. Today, we're diving into the key lessons from Tim Castle's fantastic book, The Art of Negotiation.
So let me just start by asking you a question. Do you ever get that feeling that you're missing out on opportunities, on growth, maybe even on money, all because you just didn't speak up at the right moment?
This quote really hits the nail on the head. It's the core message of the book. Staying quiet has a real, tangible cost. But, and this is a big but, learning to negotiate isn't about being aggressive or pushy. It's about learning a skill that can genuinely build a better life for you. So what does this high cost of silence actually look like? Let's dig into why we so often just clam up and avoid speaking up for what we want. Well, the biggest barrier, honestly, is just fear. We get so wrapped up in worrying about what other people are going to think. We tell ourselves it's just easier, safer, to stay quiet and avoid any kind of conflict. And these fears, man, they're powerful. They lead us straight to silence. And what happens? We don't just lose out on a promotion or a better deal. We actually start to lose our own confidence. The book gives this perfect example of an employee who took a really low salary because they were scared to ask for more, only to find out way later that a colleague negotiated for a whole lot more. Ouch. So the book wants us to completely reframe this entire idea. Negotiation isn't a fight. It's not a battle. It's just a conversation. A process of communicating with clarity and respect to find a solution where everybody involved feels heard and valued.
And this brings us to what might be the biggest insight in the entire book. The most critical negotiation you'll ever have doesn't happen across a table. It happens right inside your own head. Okay, let's break this down because it's so important. It's this internal battle between fear and clarity. When you're coming from a place of fear, you're basically just handing the steering wheel over to the other person. But when you operate from a place of clarity, you're the one in control, guiding the conversation where you want it to go.
So, the big question is, how do you build that clarity? Well, it all starts with truly, deeply understanding your own value. There's this great story in the book about a freelancer who felt underpaid. So what did they do? They took the time to document everything, all their results, their data, the positive feedback from past clients. And when they presented all that evidence to the next client, their value was so obvious, so clear, that the client agreed to their rate without a single argument. All right, so once your inner game is strong, you're ready for the outer game. Let's get into some of the smart, practical tactics you can actually use in the conversation itself. Now, this is one of the most interesting, kind of counterintuitive ideas in the book. The word no isn't an end. It's actually a beginning. When you say no respectfully, you're just setting your boundaries. And what that does is it earns you respect, and it very often opens the door to a much better alternative offer you hadn't even thought of. Okay, here's one of the most powerful and most overlooked tools you have: strategic silence. The book tells this awesome story about a car buyer. The dealer gives his final offer, and the buyer just stays quiet, smiles. And in that uncomfortable silence, which probably felt like an eternity but was really just 30 seconds, the dealer cracked and threw in free accessories. Silence creates pressure, and it almost always makes the other person talk more. Look, winning a negotiation isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's about being the most prepared. There's another great example of a startup founder about to meet with investors. He did his homework obsessively. He knew their needs, had his data ready, and his clarity and confidence were so impressive that the investors ended up offering him a way better deal than they'd originally planned. Preparation pays off. And this right here, this is a classic psychological move called anchoring. The very first number that gets mentioned in a negotiation, the anchor, psychologically frames the entire rest of the conversation. If a buyer anchors low, the final price tends to hover down there. If a seller anchors with a well-reasoned high number, the final price gravitates up towards that. Whoever sets that first anchor often controls the whole range of the negotiation. And the final tactic is maybe the simplest, but also the most important. Listen more than you talk. Seriously, asking smart questions is way more powerful than just making statements. It shows you're actually listening, and it helps you figure out what the other person really needs, so you can craft a solution that works for them too. So, after all these tactics and strategies, what's the real point? The book argues, really convincingly, that the goal isn't to crush your opponent. It's about finding a creative solution where both sides walk away feeling like they won. Because let's be real, a short-term win that burns a bridge and damages a relationship, that's not a victory. The best negotiation isn't an ending.
It's the beginning of a stronger relationship, one that's built on fairness and trust.
Think back to that freelancer story. When the client had a low budget, instead of just walking away, the freelancer negotiated for a more flexible timeline and fewer revisions. The client got a price they could handle, and the freelancer got terms that made the job worthwhile. Both of them got something they valued, and that just makes their professional relationship stronger for the future.
And that's really the punchline of the whole book. This isn't just a set of tricks you pull out when you're asking for a raise. It's a fundamental mindset. It's a whole new way of approaching your daily conversations with your boss, your partner, your friends, that really does improve the entire quality of your life.
So I'll leave you with this to think about. In your next important conversation, what's just one thing from this explainer that you're going to do differently? Are you going to prepare a little more? Maybe try out some strategic silence? Or just focus on really knowing your own value before you even start? Thanks for joining us.